Designed by the legendary Hideto Kajima of the Meta Card Fighters manga and the Rockman Zero manga for MedaSurvivor, this is SHG00 Atsuizeo-te, with a kit of Fight, Full Charge, Provoke, Emit Blade, Tank Legs, and the leg ability of Pupa, which grants a damage reduction to self up to about 20% or so when maintaining a certain threshold of Metaforce charge or higher. Now, based on the idea of a Shogi board, Atsuizeo-te actually is a dual-themed, kind of relative to the author in question here. The designer, Hideto Kajima, like I said, was responsible for a Meta Card Fighters manga that they were penning, who also had a character that was learning the card Robattle of Metaroth, who is also learning Shogi with this very same Saiyan-style similar hair design, but was also in charge of the Rockman Zero manga and character designer for it too. So lots of very powerful motifs and nods with what this very unique design brings to the table. Fight Full Charge on the head part is a special skill, meaning it does not align with any particular metal or mastery, but simply explained, it will sap the user's head HP up to 50% at fully capped at rank 5 or higher, and it will completely cap out the user's Metaforce gauge at 100%. However, that's not where it ends. Fight Full Charge also grants a fight boost effect to self, which will boost melee damage up to 50% as long as that effect remains active. But at the cost of being able to do this, getting the fight boost effect and the full charge effect all at once, Atsuizeo-te will also overload himself with a fire DOT. So as long as that effect remains active, he will be slowly losing HP over time as long as that ailment is allowed to remain active. But since the ailment is not reliant on anything, you can always cleanse it with, say, Stat Cleanse or something similar and get rid of it with no real problems, and you still keep the fight boost and the full charge effect all the same. Provoke on the right arm is a melee skill that casts a very unique symptom on the enemies in question. More or less, it's basically casting Taunt. If it's inflicted successfully, the taunt status basically forces that target in question to only attack or use attacks that affect the user that inflicted it. So basically, Atsuizeo-te will be forcing and drawing all aggro to himself as long as he's able to keep inflicting it successfully. But given that it is a negative symptom here in question, it does also mean it can be removed or negated by anyone using Stat Cleanse. But if you're looking for someone tanky with some very solid bulk to help shield allies, as a pseudo shield, he still does the job fairly well with some fairly solid armor and damage reduction. But I am getting ahead of myself. Emit Blade on the left arm is another melee attribute skill that gets a very powerful damage plus, but also has some rather expensive conditions upon doing so. Emit Blade, first of all, requires 30% CG charge in the gauge in order to even be used at all. If you don't have it, you can't select Emit Blade. However, if you do have at least that 30% or more, it does also mean that it will double the user's damage and also apply a piercing effect to the attack when going to actually use it. And it's actually kind of a very interesting way how they did it with Atsuizeo-te, basically using the hot cup of green tea there and basically turning it into a beam sword, which essentially will kind of nod back to the Rockman Zero manga to a degree. And I really like that little effect and Easter egg that they included with it. And having very impressive heating and cooling in the mid 700s to low 800s means that he'll be able to zip through and fire this off as long as he has a charge, with very few people being able to get in his way as long as he's able to fire up and charge accordingly. Tank Legs means that Atsuizeo-te will be trading his overall terrain compatibility and speed for a neutral terrain matching across the entirety of the board. So unlike all other terrains which will be having A rank, S rank, B rank, and or D rank, Tank Legs do not behave like that. It'll be a strict B rank across the board, which is a no advantage and no disadvantage either. But in trade, Tank Legs also get a free 30% damage reduction right on the top just for having the high bulk, and it stacks with any other damage reduction that comes included or gets granted in the fight. When it comes to stats, Atsuizeo-te is actually setting himself up as a very interesting change compared to how Tank Legs typically tend to operate. A base mobility of 775 is very impressive with what he brings to the table with some very good speed, where typically most tank legs tend to sit at the high 400s, maybe even mid 500s if you have a really, really good one. So this model is definitely going to be off on a very solid foot in the speed department, while not trading too much of it and keeping his bulk. The only trade-off, of course, is tank legs cannot dodge attacks, so everything that comes in toward it is guaranteed to land no matter what. In the armor department, he's packing almost 6,000 HP for the head, just over 5,000 for the right arm, just under 5,000 for the left, and almost 5,100 for the legs. So not only does he have some very solid bulk in the HP, but he's also very tanky as well, with a melee resist of 1876 and a shoot resist of 1581. So he's bulky, he's healthy, and that's also not even counting on Pupa coming in, which will reduce his damage even more so. So even if he is guaranteed to take every hit that lands, he not only is a very powerful CG, sustain, and DPS, but also has the damage reduction to back it up and keep him on the fight as long as possible. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Atsuizeo-te a very solid 7 out of 10. He is extremely self-synergetic unto himself between Fight Full Charge, Emit Blade, and Pupa, so he really doesn't have to do anything special or require any particularly unique support or healers in order to keep him in the game. He has very good damage reduction between Pupa, the fact he's tank-legged, and very good defensive numbers and HP, and Emit Blade having a base power of over 2,200 already means he's going to be hitting extremely hard when he goes in to actually make that strike. Provoke is a rather interesting choice in this respect, most likely a nod to Shogi tiles and how the game is played, but if you're looking for a pseudo tank and aggro magnet when he's not able to actually use Emit Blade properly, well, at least you got options. The only things you really have to pay attention to are the fact that Fight Full Charge will inflict the DOT symptom on himself, and because he's triple heavy, anyone with a gravity attribute will very quickly nuke him. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at an 8 out of 10. While being triple heavy and with a very unique kit, you can use him right out of the box as is. There is also the capability of mixing his parts up to really put his kit to high use. So if you need something with higher speed or mobility and can support the heavy, you could probably change the legs out for something a little more synergetic with the terrain, switch out Provoke for something more CG reliant instead, or even use Fight Full Charge and Emit Blade with something else, or even mix them up. You got plenty of options, he's very versatile, and you can use him straight out of the box as a pure set or as mixed parts, and have very solid and consistent performances every way you look at it.